Hi, Chris. I don't normally do this kind of thing, but your suggestion of a response video sounded fun, so here we go. Um, I wanted to start with just appreciating your foundational metaphor of the living and the dead as this common thread that ran throughout a lot of what you had to share. Because I do think in a metaphysical sense there is that as above so below quality, and we just see that naturally manifested if something is of death, if something is of a destructive nature. We see that effect played out in different characteristics that are subtle and hard to sometimes see. So you drawing that thread out, I just really enjoyed that throughout the thoughts you had to share. Um, One reference I wanted to offer was Charles Eisenstein, specifically the book Sacred Economics. It dives into one of the things I heard you kind of starting to hone in on was like appreciation of resource and wealth generation outside of commodification or that phenomena where it's brought into the market. Because that's one of those other consequences of the debt-based system is that since we always owe more than what actually exists, we need to bring things into the marketplace. So after the commons of land fell, it's now become the commons of culture, which is why the privatization of intellectual property and art and music has been this next big wave that's coming after the complete ownership of the earth. Um, so yeah, I think his writings would offer a lot of insight because part of what they talk about in one section is resource-based economies. Um, and while I agree with you that we shouldn't just have a welfare state that just like pays people to exist, I think people that who are in geographically distinct areas who share a resource together, such as a water table, such as a precious resource that's only found in their area that is extracted for whatever global application is needed, or regional. It doesn't have that kind of like in Alaska with their oil, they get a dividend from it. So there's marketplace activity via the resource that they all share in common. So they all see a common dividend from that. Um, Another thing to think about, so you're honing in on a lot of these natural metaphors and how they reflect the economic system back to itself. Well, consider also one of those is the positive interest rate. Um, and that might be something that's crossed your mind if you're honing in on like the debt aspect. Well, if the positive, that's the vehicle of it, that's the cancerous quality that always demands the consumption of more is the positive interest rate. What does a negative interest rate economy look like? And again, Charles Eisenstein, I think it's this beautiful model wherein money entropies, just like food and land and anything that's left untended, or once it's been plucked, once it's been taken from the garden and it's no longer living, it is now dead. Other than fermentation, which is still just kind of dying in slow motion at the end of the day, because I mean, you can age things for so long, but their palatability and use to humans has its, expiration date. Money needs to behave the same way. And this actually has this really, in theory, it has this really cool function where it actually encourages the investment in each other, because the strategy you can then encourage is, say the negative interest rate is 4%. So for every $100 you just have sitting in the bank, you're gonna lose 4 of it. Well, you now have an incentive to give people a loan that they're not going to pay you back everything that you loan them. They you could say 98. I'm going to give you $100, and I'm in a year I'm going to want like 98 back. So you're not holding on to that $100. Or at least the most you're ever going to have is the same you started with. There's no way to make more out of nothing. I'm going to give you $100 and I just want 100 back in like a year, whatever. Um, Versus I'm just going to hold this and sit on it and just, look at it until it's like, $96. because that's the phenomena, the hoarding thing, right? Like we want because it's the store of value and it's the means of exchange. So we naturally want a lot of it for the security of exchanging it for what we need. But if it's no longer the store of value, if it's the things that are acquired by it, real wealth that doesn't actually have as great of an entropy, land is always going to be there, your home is always going to be there, your tools, so long as you take care of them and maintain them, are always going to be there. If it decays, it loses the talismanic illusion effect it has now, and we realize it for just a mechanism, a piece of paper that we can utilize to just have as a social lubricant for exchanging goods and services instead of the means to life. Because right now, if you don't have money, unless you're equipped with very special skills that are either handed down from you or you spent time participating in the system to learn, most of us can't just hit the log out button on this one. It's money is life, artificially. There was something else I wanted to share. Oh, right, the sixth. I think it might be worth toying the idea of a sixth thing being a rehabilitation socially from othering each other. That phenomena where we because I see this on like Breitbart commenting lines, and I see this or hear this from like my friends on the left of like each side thinks the other one's to kill them. Like everyone thinks there's a boogeyman. Well, not everyone. I should rephrase that. It's common to think that there's a boogeyman on the other side of the lines that you have to fight and struggle against in order to have liberty or salvation or whatever. But there is no them. Like there is only us. Like you're saying, we are not distinct from nature. We are nature, and and we're also all interdependent on each other. We have this Hobbesian, Adam Smithian viewpoint where it's a savage world that civilized man has to claw his way to dominate over for his own security, and sorry, I lost my train of thought because I just realized my video is like 7.5 minutes long, and it's like way longer than you need to be given your time of day to listen to. I thought this would be faster than writing, but apparently not. The othering that we do to each other helps us to create an enemy to fight, because then it gives us a rationale that justifies behaving out of integrity with life against other life. It's not in our natural code to hurt one another or to use each other's lives as a resource pool for our own gain. That's not who we are. And so the sixth thing that needs to change is a change of the story from separation to the story of interbeing, where we are all nature together. We are all the people together. Like, it doesn't have to be a one world order, like you were saying, to be decentralized, to be this diffuse phenomena where we feel loyalty to like other living beings, which is just what we're around. It doesn't have to be the state. It doesn't have to be a national identity. We can feel one with each other while still expressing and affirming our own individuality through our own region, through our own seasons and the natural lifestyles that come around that, and the things we celebrate and the values we have. And too, like with that story of interbeing, we then see that, instead of more for you is less for me, we start seeing that if the overall health of this ecosystem, which metaphorically is also and literally is the health of those around us and their well-being, there's a positive feedback loop that we see in regenerative agriculture, that life keeps feeding life, and it bounces off, and it keeps enriching and diversifying and encouraging the expression of new adaptations to the change of the environment as time just naturally changes the environment. So yeah, toying around with the idea of a sixth thing needing to change being that mythos we operate out of. And I really am pulling like a ton of this just out of what I've learned from listening to Charles Eisenstein. So if you want a really well written, well spoken human, who, I mean, his perspective on everything he's written about is just beautiful, and it rings with the sense of livingness I hear in what you've shared. So that's my like 10.5 minute rant response video thing. If you took the time to get to this part, I just really appreciate it, since I'm just some guy, but you know, I'm a farm hand. I'm looking to do my thing. I've been in the Thriving Farmers conference with y'all for the last couple days, and you know, I just, you know, if you got to this point, as someone who I've been listening to a lot of good advice from, I appreciate that. So thank you, and have a good night. Bye bye. From Grand Rapids, Michigan. Maybe see you sometime.